Stampeders pull off a gigantic move to start the offseason as they have acquired Vernon Adams for a bunch of picks and then also acquiring a bunch of picks. They don't have to give up the first overall pick in the draft for it, and it makes for a very intriguing situation down the road. First and foremost, fantastic trade. I was on Sportsnet 960 today chatting with John Hodge, and I said it would have been personally insulting to the BC Lions how quickly I would have accepted this trade if I was the Stampeders and they offered it to me. It would have hurt their feelings how quickly yes, 100 times yes, if they came to me with that trade for Vernon Adams. I think this is a home run deal for the Calgary Stampeders in every sense. This is the quarterback that they have needed since Bo Levi Mitchell left. This is the change in culture and attitude around this team that they have needed since Bo Levi Mitchell left, but certainly in the last couple of years as well. And it is the spark that this franchise has needed over the last few years as the fan base and attendance starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. This is the guy that you need. It is a slam dunk home run 100% you make this deal from a Stampeders standpoint. The only downside is that he is in his 30s and he got hurt last year, so he could get hurt again. But we are coming off of, I believe, back-to-back CFL seasons where every team used at least two quarterbacks. So, and it's what we said about Tua Tagovailoa in the NFL. Every quarterback, every player in football is one play away and one big hit away from your season being altered. Vernon Adams, I guess it's kind of the same, but I believe that this is a huge move for the Calgary Stampeders to try to get back on everyone's radar here. From a football standpoint, it is quite different. And now, mentioned this with John Hodge, and he brought up the point that you certainly can have teams like, part of what I'm about to say is offensive philosophy, and part of it is the personnel that they had. But Vernon Adams threw almost 200 fewer passes than Jake Maier did this season, and Vernon Adams attempted more passes 20 or more yards downfield than Jake Maier tried this season. That's absurd, and just shows, it does show a bit of the conservative nature for the Stampeders offense, but it also showed that Vernon Adams loves chucking the ball downfield. And that is an aspect that this team has, I think, desperately lacked over the last couple of seasons. And so I think to bring in this sort of a talent signifies that there is going to be a bit of a direction change. And I think it also signifies to the rest of the league that all this shit you've been hearing about Calgary for the last little bit, that's going away now. We have a team that is going to be one that should be respected in the Canadian Football League. And I think that this is a guy who can kind of send that message to the rest of the league. This is a culture setter, and this is a trend setter, really, in the CFL. And I think he will be able to, like Hodge said before, he will be able to acquire, or help the Stampeders anyway, acquire some really strong talent in terms of free agency and start to change the perception, because Calgary has been just taking a beat. Winnipeg didn't get beat this bad in the Grey Cup. It is Calgary who is getting all of the different shots from specifically Toronto Argonauts players talking about everything that was going on there and all of the issues that have kind of come up with this team. So it has been... It is a desperately needed facelift for the Calgary Stampeders, and a move that I think is going to really help them out in terms of being competitive in the CFL's West Division. They have a long way to go. Do not hear what I'm not saying. They got a long way to go. But given the nature of the Canadian Football League, there's a lot of players who are available in free agency this year, and I think that this really does send a message. The other big thing coming out of this now is they have the first overall pick, and the number one player from the CFL Scouting Bureau is Curtis Rourke. Now, Adams very recently had a bit of a bad experience with a team he was playing on bringing in a dude with the last name Rourke, who happened to be Canadian, to come in and play quarterback. This situation would be a little bit different. As Hodge again mentioned with me on Sportsnet today, that if you draft Rourke, you are drafting him with the understanding that he ain't playing for you this year. And maybe not even next year. But there is the potential that at somewhere down the line, he makes his way back to the Canadian Football League. And so there is a bit of a long-term play with this, but Adams is only 31. And so, like we are seeing right now, Trevor Harris, 38 years old, had his team within a game of the Grey Cup. Now, they play different styles, and I don't know how well Adams is going to age necessarily, but I also think he is a good enough and talented enough quarterback that even as certain physical aspects start to go, he can kind of adapt that way. So you could see him being the quarterback for the Stamps for the next 5-7 years even. And so if you are using a draft pick on Rourke to be that guy, and maybe be your future, then I would find that a bit of a tough sell on a Vernon Adams. And so if it were me, I probably wouldn't go that particular direction. You can see it, and in perfect football utopia, you have Vernon Adams be the guy, Rourke goes off, plays a couple of years for whoever as their backup, and whenever decides to come back, and then you have VA who can kind of nurture him and grow him along, and then there's a perfect pass-off, and once again, the Calgary Stampeders have excellent quarterback play for between a couple of different eras for over a decade. And I don't even, like, I feel like Vernon Adams, the way he handled the Rourke situation in BC, would actually be kind of okay with that. But it is a bit of an awkward situation. And so, honestly, I think that because you have a fan base that has, for lack of a better term, left you and is a little bit disgruntled right now, I think you can very, very easily sell to this fan base. Look, we got Vernon Adams. Let's go out and get now another Canadian wide receiver, let's say, because that's the next spot. The next guy is a wide receiver. I'm forgetting the name right now. Apologies. But, or let's go out and address another need here with another Canadian, and let's just go. We can put VA on the season tickets. We can put this number 1 overall pick on the season tickets, and whatever free agents we sign, and really start to build this thing up. So it seems ridiculous because this team was close to a dynasty not 5 years ago, but the pressure is really on. And I don't know if Dave Dickinson right now can afford the long view, so to speak. And I think that was signified with this move for Vernon Adams. On the Lions side, it's better work. Like, Rourke better figure it out, because this could be catastrophic on the BC side. They didn't get a ton. It is technically kind of like getting a first-round pick because Edmonton loses theirs in the supplemental draft. So this is the pick they're getting from Calgary is the 9th overall pick, which probably put this offer over the top for them compared to other CFL teams who maybe didn't want to offer a first-round pick. But this, I think, does kind of help it does help and it doesn't help the BC Lions, because it gets the quarterback controversy gone. They were able to move up in the draft in a couple of different areas, but this now has a ton of pressure on Nathan Rourke to be that guy again, because if they have another down year out there, again, I think the pressure is on with the BC Lions. So it's very interesting how things can shift in the Canadian Football League.